I still remember the sound of my mother's voice that night, cold, sharp, final. "Get out, Lena. You've humiliated us enough." Those words didn't just throw me out of my home, they buried me alive in shame. I stood there, suitcase trembling in my hands, while my father turned his face away like I was some stranger off the street. My brother, Caleb, didn't say a word, just watched, silent and guilty, hiding behind their lies. They said I ruined the family's reputation. They said I was the reason our name would never be respected again. But the truth was far darker than their whispers. I left that night without looking back. No family, no future, just a heart that wouldn't stop shaking. For years, I carried their words like scars under my skin. But what they didn't know was that the same secret they buried me with is the one that will destroy them now. Because tonight, the family that called me their shame will beg for my forgiveness. Growing up in the Moore household felt like living inside a framed photograph, perfect, polished, and painfully posed. Every morning, my mother, Evelyn, made sure the curtains were open just enough for the neighbors to see the expensive dining set she loved to brag about. My father, Harold, sat at the head of the table like a king in his silent kingdom, reading the newspaper while we all pretended to be a happy family. At every Sunday breakfast, my mother's favorite line echoed across the table. "Respect is what keeps this family alive. Without it, we're nothing." I used to nod, pretending I understood. But even as a little girl, I felt that respect in our home had a strange rule. It only belonged to those who made the most look good. My brother Caleb fit that mold perfectly. He was charming, loud, and confident. Every compliment, every smile, every ounce of pride from our parents landed squarely on him. When he spoke, they listened. When I did, it was as if the air itself swallowed my words. I remember one Christmas dinner, the kind where the whole family gathered, laughing too loudly for the sake of appearance. Aunt Vivian kept telling everyone how Caleb got promoted again, her voice rising just enough for the neighbors to overhear through the open windows. Then she turned to me and asked, almost mockingly, "And what about you, Lena? Still finding yourself?" The table went quiet. My mother's fork paused midair, her polite smile frozen. "She's taking her time," my mother said quickly. "Some flowers bloom late." But her eyes told me I was an embarrassment she was trying to hide behind manners. I tried, God knows I tried, to be the daughter they could proudly introduce. I studied hard, volunteered at church, even helped manage my father's business files when he was ill. But every small success was brushed aside with a cold, "That's nice, dear." While Caleb's mistakes, and there were many, were called youthful adventures. And then there was Ethan, my fiancé back then. My parents adored him. They said, "Finally, someone respectable enough to handle our Lena." For a while, I believed that marriage could fix everything, could finally make me worthy in their eyes. But I was wrong. I didn't realize then that the same man who held my hand at family dinners was already keeping secrets with my brother behind my back. Looking back now, I can see it, the forced laughter, the careful words, the smiles that hid sharp edges. We looked like a family built on love, but we were just a house built on fear, fear of losing control, fear of being ordinary, fear of the truth. And somewhere beneath that glossy surface, something rotten was growing. I could feel it every time my mother said, "Family first," and my father added, "As long as they know their place." That night, as we raised our glasses to another perfect family dinner, I caught Caleb watching me, smirking, secretive. And for the first time, I wondered if I was the only one living honestly in that house. Because deep down, I knew someone in that family was about to destroy everything we pretended to be. It started quietly, with whispers behind closed doors and phone calls that stopped the moment I entered the room. My mother would lower her voice, my father would clear his throat, and Caleb would flash that smug grin like he owned the world. At first, I told myself it was paranoia. Maybe they were planning another business dinner or one of those ridiculous charity galas my mother loved. But one morning, while cleaning out the study for my father, I found an envelope on his desk. Inside was a draft of his new will. My hands trembled as I read it. My name, completely missing. Every property, every asset, every share of the family company was going to Caleb. It felt like the air had been punched out of me. Years of loyalty, silence, and obedience, erased with one signature. That night, I confronted my parents at dinner. "Why am I not mentioned in the will?" My mother didn't even look up from her plate. Because you chose to live your life on your own terms, Lena.
We can't reward rebellion. Rebellion.
That was what she called independence. My father folded his newspaper, his voice calm and cruel. You've always been different.
Caleb carries the family name with pride.
You question everything. That's not how respect works. I could barely swallow my tears. Respect isn't blind obedience, Dad. It's honesty.
His eyes hardened.
Honesty ruins families. Caleb laughed softly, stabbing his steak with his fork.
Come on, Lena. You were never really part of this business.
You don't even understand how it works. I turned to him, my voice shaking. Maybe not. But I know how deceit works, and you've mastered it.
He smiled wider.
Careful, little sister. You don't want to say something you'll regret. In that moment, I realized what this was, a punishment. I wasn't being excluded by mistake. I was being erased on purpose. My mother's idea of control had reached its cruelest form, rewriting my existence like it never mattered. Days turned into weeks, and the house began to feel smaller, suffocating. At breakfast, Caleb discussed his future plans with my parents, while I sat quietly in the corner like an unwanted guest. Aunt Vivian started visiting more often, bringing gossip like poison disguised as dessert. Poor Lena, she said one afternoon, her fake sympathy dripping. Some girls just don't know how to please their parents. That night, Ethan came over, my fiancé, my last hope for some kind of support.
But even he avoided my eyes.
When I asked him if he knew about the will, he sighed. Lena, your father's just protecting the family's assets.
You need to understand. I cut him off.
You mean he's protecting Caleb?
He didn't answer. His silence said enough.
That was when the betrayal began to sink in, not just from my family, but from the man who once promised to stand by me. The next morning, as I left for work, I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen. She's becoming a problem, my mother said. If she doesn't fall in line, we'll have to make sure she's handled.
Handled? Like I was a scandal waiting to happen. Something inside me broke that day.
The daughter who begged for approval died quietly, and someone colder took her place, someone who wanted answers. But fate didn't give me answers. It gave me something worse, the truth. Because that night, I caught Caleb and Ethan together in the study, whispering about a deal that would destroy everything I believed in. And that was the moment I realized the betrayal had already begun. After discovering Caleb and Ethan's secret conversation, I couldn't sleep for nights. Every whisper in that house sounded like a threat. Every silence, a warning. I began noticing the shift, the way eyes turned when I entered a room, how laughter stopped mid-breath. Whatever they were plotting, I was no longer just ignored. I was being watched. It began at Caleb's engagement dinner. Ironic, since he was marrying the very woman Ethan once claimed to love. The hall was draped in gold, photographers circling like vultures, my parents glowing with pride. I stood near the back, clutching a glass of water, invisible in a room filled with people who once pretended to care. My mother spotted me from across the room, her expression tightening. Lena, don't just stand there, she hissed. Smile for the cameras. You're still part of this family, at least for now. Her words stung like acid. Why don't you just tell everyone I'm the decoration that doesn't match your perfect picture?
I said softly. Her jaw clenched. Don't start, not tonight.
Caleb deserves his moment.
Then came the toast.
Caleb stood up, grinning, glass raised high. To the people who've always believed in me, he said, his eyes sliding toward our parents. And to those who taught me what failure looks like, so I'd never become it. Laughter rippled through the hall. My chest tightened. They all knew who he meant. I tried to walk out quietly, but Aunt Vivian caught my arm. Leaving so soon? She asked, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. You should stay, dear. Maybe you'll learn something about success. The humiliation burned through me. I felt every eye on my back as I turned away. Outside, the night was cool, but my heart was on fire. I wanted to scream, to expose every secret, every lie they'd built their image on. But I didn't, not yet. Over the next few weeks, the cruelty became deliberate. My father stopped acknowledging me at breakfast. My mother instructed the servants not to serve me until everyone else had eaten. Even Ethan, when he came to the house, avoided my gaze like I was a ghost haunting their comfort. One afternoon, I overheard my mother talking to a neighbor by the gate. She's not the same since her little breakdown, she whispered.
We keep her around out of pity.
She doesn't understand what family means.
The neighbor nodded sympathetically. I felt the tears burn behind my eyes. Breakdown? That was their story now, rewriting my truth once again. That evening, Nora visited me. She looked worried.
Lena, I saw something you should know, she said, showing me a post on her phone. It was a photo of Caleb smiling with Ethan, captioned, "The Moore Brothers, Unstoppable Duo."
Brothers. My fiancé and my brother. My stomach twisted.
I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound I didn't recognize. So that's what I am now, the ghost they erased.
Nora squeezed my hand.
You don't deserve this. I know, I whispered. And they're about to learn that too. That night, I sat in my old bedroom, surrounded by the remains of my past, trophies, faded photos, my mother's framed compliments that never belonged to me. I stared at the family portrait on the wall, the one we took years ago.
All smiles. No truth.
Slowly, I took it down, turned it over, and on the back, I wrote one sentence. You built your peace on my pain. As I placed it face down on the dresser, my phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. If you want to know what your family really did to you, meet me tomorrow at noon. Come alone. My pulse quickened. The storm I'd been waiting for had finally begun. I still remember the rain that night, relentless, pounding against the glass like it wanted to break in and witness what was about to happen. I arrived at the estate just before dinner, dressed in the same black coat my mother hated. I was supposed to be there for a family announcement.
No one told me what it was. I should have known better.
Inside, the dining room was glowing, crystal glasses, polished silverware, too much laughter. Caleb stood at the head of the table, radiating smugness. My parents sat beside him, proud and satisfied, like kings blessing their heir.
I took the empty chair at the far end. No one greeted me.
My mother only glanced once, eyes cold and assessing, as if deciding whether I was worth acknowledging.
Then my father cleared his throat.
We're here tonight to celebrate a new chapter in the Moore legacy. I looked around, waiting for him to mention all of us, the family.
But instead, he turned toward Caleb.
Our son has proven himself worthy of carrying the Moore name into the next generation. As of today, he'll assume full control of the company and all its assets.
Applause. Smiles. Toasts. And then, silence.
Everyone turned to me. What about me?
The words slipped out before I could stop them. My father didn't even look my way. You made your choice, Lena. You chose to walk away from this family's values.
You brought humiliation, rumors, and shame. I told the truth, I said quietly. I refuse to lie for you. My mother slammed her hand on the table. Truth.
Her voice trembled with fury.
You think truth feeds families?
Truth destroys them. You ruined your brother's engagement.
You embarrassed us in front of everyone we know.
My heart clenched.
He was cheating, Mom. With my fiancé. Gasps rippled through the room, but no one dared look at Caleb. He leaned back, calm, smirking. Still clinging to that story, Lena?
Maybe that's why Ethan left you.
You can't let go of your imagination.
My throat burned.
I turned toward Ethan, standing quietly near the doorway. Tell them, I whispered.
Tell them what you told me.
He didn't move.
Didn't speak. His eyes dropped to the floor.
And in that silence, I died a little. My father stood, his voice steady as stone. Enough.
You've shamed us long enough. You're no longer part of this family.
Effective immediately, you're disinherited. You'll leave this house tonight.
The room blurred. My heartbeat thundered in my ears.
I looked from face to face, my mother, my father, Caleb, even Aunt Vivian, waiting for someone, anyone, to defend me.
No one did. I heard my own voice crack.
You're erasing me. Your daughter.
My mother's lip curled.
You were never loyal enough to be one of us.
That broke something deep inside me. The humiliation didn't end there.
As I turned to leave, Caleb raised his glass, his voice dripping with mock sympathy.
To Lena, he said, smiling.
May she finally find whatever she's been looking for.
Laughter filled the room. My laughter. My family. My blood.
I walked out into the storm, each raindrop feeling like a slap. My clothes clung to me, heavy, cold. I couldn't feel my hands. I couldn't feel anything except the ache in my chest, the hollow where love used to live. 4 days after, I stayed in Nora's apartment, staring at the ceiling, unable to eat, unable to sleep. The world felt dim. I kept replaying their words, their faces, the way my father looked relieved when I walked out.
Like cutting me off was an act of mercy.
People talk about heartbreak like it's loud, screaming, crying, throwing things.
But the real kind is quiet.
It's sitting in the dark, realizing no one's coming to save you. One morning, Nora found me by the window, clutching an old photo, the family portrait. My mother's hand on Caleb's shoulder, my father's arm behind me, but never around me. A perfect illusion. "You can't keep holding on to this, Lena," Nora said softly.
I stared at the picture.
"They took everything from me, Nora. My home, my name, my dignity."
She hesitated.
"Then take it back." Those words sank deep into me.
Take it back.
That afternoon, I packed the photo and the few things I had left. Before leaving, I slipped the portrait into a drawer and whispered to myself, "You wanted silence, Dad?
I'll give you silence.
But mine will be louder." That night, I went to sleep not as the broken daughter they discarded, but as something else, something sharper. Because in their attempt to destroy me, they'd handed me the one thing they feared most, the truth. And soon, the truth would destroy them. That was the night I stopped begging to be seen, and started preparing to be remembered. After the rain that stole my name, I spent a long time learning how to be small again, and then how to be dangerous in silence. Grief carved a hollow, but it also cleared space. I stopped asking for crumbs of affection and started looking for the light that runs under locked doors, the hidden accounts, the quiet favors, the texts that prove more than memory ever could. First, I rebuilt my life piece by piece. I took temp jobs, I answered emails at night, I learned how to navigate contracts and numbers, not to become them, but to read them for lies. Nora became my anchor. She sat with me through spreadsheets and subpoenas until the world started to look like a map I could learn to follow. "You don't need them to be whole, Lena," she said, eyes steady. "You need them to be honest."
I repeated that until the words tasted like iron. Then I started watching.
Not with fury at first, but with calculation. Caleb's late-night meetings, Ethan's private calls, my parents' sudden donations to shell companies, patterns emerged. I traced transfers, followed signatures, collected tiny contradictions. Every favor they'd asked of their friends was a loose thread. Every hush-money check was a breadcrumb. I knew I couldn't fight them with shouting. Their world obeyed appearances. So I chose exposure, slow, surgical, undeniable. I reached out to Maya Cole, the journalist from the local paper who had a reputation for not being bought. I handed her documents I'd found. Emails between Caleb and Ethan, bank statements showing transfers to accounts under my father's name, and a voice memo where my mother praised a cover-up as necessary. Maya's eyes went quiet when she listened. "This is enough to start an investigation," she said. "But it'll be dangerous."
I smiled without humor.
"Danger is the point." I didn't want to ruin anyone for the thrill.
I wanted truth.
I wanted my name cleared by facts, not by apologies sown from guilt. I rehearsed every conversation in my head, played possible outcomes, denial, deflection, attacks on my character. I knew my father would call me ungrateful, my mother would cry for public sympathy, and Caleb would try to buy loyalty. That's why I layered the evidence, files that cross-referenced each other, witnesses who could corroborate dates, a timeline that couldn't be rewritten. There were nights when the old loneliness returned, sharp and stupid. I would sit with the family portrait folded in my drawer and whisper, "This is for the daughter you erased."
Then I'd get to work.
I set up anonymous tips, leaked a financial summary to an insider who hated Caleb's arrogance, and built a web so tight they wouldn't see the trap until they were already caught. Each step felt like stepping farther from the girl who begged to be seen and closer to someone who could finally be heard. My plan had a hinge. The charity gala, their greatest show of respectability, where donors arrive in formal silence and secrets hide in crystal bowls. If Maya could publish an expose that dropped during that night, cameras and guests would witness the unmasking live. The timing had to be perfect. Their reaction would be captured, their apologies recorded, their panic unstageable. I typed the final message to Maya and hit send.
I didn't celebrate.
I steadied myself, breathed, and practiced the face I would wear when everything fell apart, calm, collected, unbroken. Whatever happens tonight, I told Nora, holding her hand. We do it with truth.
Her grip tightened.
Then do it. I walked out into the twilight toward the hall where my family would gather, heart thudding like a drum. The street lights cast long shadows and I felt the weight of every decision pinning me forward. The doors would open in an hour. Inside them waited my family, unaware, confident, certain of their victory. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and shallow laughter. Cameras flashed like lightning, reporters whispered about the perfect Moore family. I stood among them in a silver dress that didn't belong to their world anymore. Tonight wasn't about blending in, it was about ending the illusion. Caleb was already basking in attention near the stage, arm around his fiancée, eyes gleaming with arrogance. My parents moved through the crowd with polished smiles, accepting congratulations for their unshakable family legacy. Every detail, every camera angle, every guest had been carefully chosen to feed their pride. They didn't know that pride was about to turn into their noose. As the host announced the Moore Family Charity Gala, Maya's exposé went live. Phones started buzzing like a swarm of bees. I watched as confusion spread, murmurs, gasps, a ripple of disbelief. My father froze mid-handshake when someone whispered in his ear. My mother's smile faltered. Caleb's phone lit up. He glanced at it, and I saw the color drain from his face. The screen behind the stage flickered, the live feed changed. Instead of their promotional video, a new headline appeared. The Moore legacy, lies, fraud, and a daughter's exile. The room fell silent. The air turned electric. Then came the audio clips. My father's voice, calm and cruel, erase her. She's a liability. My mother's cold reply, no one will believe her if we control the story. And finally, Caleb's laughter, family first, as long as it pays. The audience gasped. Glasses clattered. My parents' perfect world began to collapse, second by second. I stepped forward, voice trembling but clear. You all taught me that respect was everything. But you forgot something, respect can't survive on lies. My father turned toward me, face pale, fury twisting his jaw. What did you do?
I met his stare.
I told the truth. Something this family never learned to live with.
Caleb lunged toward the microphone, shouting, "This is a setup.
She's doing this for revenge." I walked closer, steady, unflinching.
No, Caleb.
This is called accountability. Reporters surrounded us, flashes igniting the chaos.
My mother tried to speak, but her voice broke.
Lena, please, not here, not like this. Here is exactly where it belongs, I said softly. You destroyed me in public, now the truth destroys you the same way.
The sound of cameras clicked like judgment.
The guests whispered, names spreading like wildfire. Ethan stood frozen by the exit, guilt written all over his face.
When our eyes met, he looked away. That was all the apology I would ever get.
Caleb slammed his hand on the podium.
You think this makes you strong?
You just ruined everything we built.
I took a deep breath.
You built nothing.
You stole. You lied.
You used me to hide your rut, but you forgot, truth doesn't stay buried forever.
Security rushed in to contain the chaos.
My father tried to make a statement, his voice shaking. We'll handle this privately.
I looked at him one last time.
You already handled it privately, Dad.
You threw me away in private.
But this belongs to the world. My mother sobbed quietly as Caleb stormed out, pushing through the crowd. The guests moved back, watching the muss unravel, the empire of reputation crumbling in real time. I didn't smile.
There was no joy in watching them fall.
Only a strange, quiet justice, the kind that doesn't scream, just settles. As reporters surrounded me, someone asked, Miss Moore, what do you have to say about your family now? I looked up at the lights, felt the weight of years finally lifting from my chest, and said,
They taught me what shame feels like.
Tonight, I taught them what truth sounds like. The flashes exploded again, and somewhere in the chaos, I walked away, leaving them under the glare of their own lies. Because in that moment, I wasn't their disgrace anymore. I was their mirror. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and shallow laughter. Cameras flashed like lightning, reporters whispered about the perfect Moore family. I stood among them in a silver dress that didn't belong to their world anymore. Tonight wasn't about blending in, it was about ending the illusion. Caleb was already basking in attention near the stage, arm around his fiancée, eyes gleaming with arrogance. My parents moved through the crowd with polished smiles, accepting congratulations for their unshakable family legacy. Every detail, every camera angle, every guest had been carefully chosen to feed their pride. They didn't know that pride was about to turn into their noose. As the host announced the Moore Family Charity Gala, Maya's exposé went live. Phones started buzzing like a swarm of bees. I watched as confusion spread, murmurs, gasps, a ripple of disbelief. My father froze mid-handshake when someone whispered in his ear. My mother's smile faltered. Caleb's phone lit up. He glanced at it, and I saw the color drain from his face. The screen behind the stage flickered, the live feed changed. Instead of their promotional video, a new headline appeared. The Moore legacy, lies, fraud, and a daughter's exile. The room fell silent. The air turned electric. Then came the audio clips. My father's voice, calm and cruel, erase her. She's a liability. My mother's cold reply, no one will believe her if we control the story. And finally, Caleb's laughter, family first, as long as it pays. The audience gasped. Glasses clattered. My parents' perfect world began to collapse, second by second. I stepped forward, voice trembling but clear. You all taught me that respect was everything. But you forgot something. Respect can't survive on lies. My father turned toward me, face pale, fury twisting his jaw. What did you do? I met his stare. I told the truth. Something this family never learned to live with. Caleb lunged toward the microphone, shouting, "This is a setup. She's doing this for revenge." I walked closer, steady, unflinching. No, Caleb. This is called accountability. Reporters surrounded us, flashes igniting the chaos. My mother tried to speak, but her voice broke. Lena, please, not here, not like this. Here is exactly where it belongs, I said softly. You destroyed me in public, now the truth destroys you the same way. The sound of cameras clicked like judgment. The guests whispered, names spreading like wildfire. Ethan stood frozen by the exit, guilt written all over his face. When our eyes met, he looked away. That was all the apology I would ever get. Caleb slammed his hand on the podium. You think this makes you strong? You just ruined everything we built. I took a deep breath. You built nothing. You stole. You lied. You used me to hide your rut, but you forgot, truth doesn't stay buried forever. Security rushed in to contain the chaos. My father tried to make a statement, his voice shaking. We'll handle this privately. I looked at him one last time. You already handled it privately, Dad. You threw me away in private. But this belongs to the world. My mother sobbed quietly as Caleb stormed out, pushing through the crowd. The guests moved back, watching the muss unravel, the empire of reputation crumbling in real time. I didn't smile. There was no joy in watching them fall. Only a strange, quiet justice, the kind that doesn't scream, just settles. As reporters surrounded me, someone asked, Miss Moore, what do you have to say about your family now? I looked up at the lights, felt the weight of years finally lifting from my chest, and said, They taught me what shame feels like. Tonight, I taught them what truth sounds like. The flashes exploded again, and somewhere in the chaos, I walked away, leaving them under the glare of their own lies. Because in that moment, I wasn't their disgrace anymore. I was their mirror.